Why God, being almighty, holy and just, has not yet destroyed Satan. It is a question that few dare to ask out loud, a question that, for centuries, has burned in the deepest part of the human soul, while evil walks among us, disguised as ideology, power, pleasure, or indifference. And maybe you also have you thought about half of the pain, of a loss inexplicable, of an injustice that left you without air. Where is God when the enemy acts without mercy? This video is not for those looking for answers easy. It is for those who dare to look at the eyes of the darkest mysteries of the faith, because what you are about to hear will not only change the way you see the good and evil, but also your place in this eternal story. But before we go any further, I want you to do something. A simple action that can ignite a flame of faith among those who see this video. Write in the comments this phrase: I believe in the God who already defeated evil. Do it if you have faith. Do it if you believe, even with wounds. That phrase is not just a statement, it's a signal, a way of saying, I am here, I have not stopped believing. And now I ask you one more thing. Don't close this video, don't leave. Stay until the end, because I'm going to tell you something that isn't taught in pulpits, nor is preaching in the altars, a truth that unites theology, history, and eternal purpose in a single revelation. And that will answer once and for all the question that has haunted believers for generations. We begin this journey not as spectators, but as participants in a cosmic conflict that already has a closing date, but whose final outcome, ironically, is still waiting. Prepare to see with new eyes. Prepare to understand what few dare to explain. Before being Satan, he was Lucifer, a name that sends shivers down your spine today, but once meant everything. Contrary, light-bearer is what it means. And not just because of its name, was, according to the prophet Ezekiel, an anointed cherub, perfect in beauty, wisdom, and splendor. Not a monster, but one of the most sublime creations of the Most High. The scripture says that it was established in the holy mountain of God among stones of fire, walking near the divine throne. His beauty was unmatched, its purpose to reflect the glory of God with perfection. But there, right in that celestial brightness, something unthinkable germinated, the pride. It wasn't a mistake of the divine design, it was the price of the freedom. Because God did not create slaves, created free beings, even with the ability to reject it. Lucifer did not want to reflect the light, wanted possess her, do not. It was enough to worship God. He desired to be worshipped. Isaiah describes his ambition with words chilling. I will ascend to heaven. In high up next to the stars of God, I will raise my throne. I will be like the Most High. It wasn't a slip, was a deliberate rebellion. Lucifer, in his vanity, became in the first traitor of the cosmos, and with words seductive, dragged a third of the angels heavenly, not with swords, but with persuasion, not with violence, but with a lie. God is not worthy. You can be like him. That was the origin of the eternal conflict, the moment when the sky fractured. Can you imagine the pain that caused that betrayal? It wasn't just a mutiny. It was a rupture between love and pride, between the Creator and his most splendid creature. But it more shocking is this: God does not destroy in that moment. Why? This is where it begins, the true mystery. For although Satan was cast out of the sky, your existence was not extinguished. It was allowed for something much greater than immediate punishment. And to understand that, we have to talk about a war, an invisible war, but absolutely real. The war that changed the fate of the universe. The sky is not always was a place of perfect harmony. After the Lucifer's rebellion, the unimaginable, it happened. A war broke out in the eternal kingdom. It was not a symbolic dispute. It was a cosmic confrontation between light and darkness, between the obedience and the arrogance. The Bible, in Revelation 12, describes this conflict with terrifying force. There was a great battle in heaven. Michael and his angels, they fought against him, dragon. That dragon, it was Lucifer, already transformed into Satan. But here it is crucial to understand something. This was not a fight of equals. God has no opponents. Satan is a created being, limited. He is not the dark counterpart of the Almighty. There is no yin and yang in the heaven. There is only one sovereign and one traitor. Was he Archangel Michael, leader of the heavenly army, who received the mission to confront it? And the battle was not long. The dragon and his angels did not prevail. They were thrown out sky, like lightning struck in middle of the eternity, exiles, humiliated, defeated, and yet not annihilated. Here another uncomfortable question arises. Why does God, having all the power, not made it disappear? Why expel them to the land, allowing them to continue acting? The answer is not simple, but it is essential. God's justice is not impulsive, nor his plan is limited to punishment, because even in the rebellion, God reveals his eternal purpose. He does not need to demonstrate his power by annihilating his enemies. He prefers expose the evil to its root deeper, leave it act for later judge her with full evidence before all heavens, not out of necessity, but out of glory. The war in Idalling was he beginning, but the battlefield moved. Since then, the land became in her scenario where that rebellion would continue its course, and we, human beings, would enter into game, because the fallen enemy did not retreat. He found a new objective, the creation most beloved of God. And her strategy would be even more subtle and dangerous. But to understand how acts now, we must discover what really differentiates the fallen angels of the demons that still they look for bodies. After the great fall, Lucifer did not descend alone. A third of the angels, celestial, it continued, convinced by his vision distorted of freedom and glory. But who are exactly these entities? And why some manifest as fallen angels and others as demons? Confusion is common, but the scriptures and ancient texts offer disturbing clues. The fallen angels, too known as principalities or powers, retain structure, hierarchy, and superior intelligence. They are not chaotic or irrational. They operate with strategy within a system of spiritual influence. From the shadows, they inspire ideologies, manipulate systems, and influence nations whole. They are generals invisible in a silent war. On the other hand, the demons they seem have a more desperate nature. They do not have body own. They seek to inhabit living beings, influence minds, oppress and distort. Jesus, same confronted and expelled many of them during their ministry. But why this difference? Some theological currents and texts, such as the Book of Enoch, suggest that the demons are not simply rebel angels, but the wandering spirits of an ancient hybridization, the Nephilim, born of the union forbidden between angels and human women. When they were destroyed by the flood, their souls were left caught in the earth, searching for bodies to express themselves. Damned spirits, restless. Whatever your origin exactly, one thing is certain. Both fallen angels and demons continue assets. One acts as a strategist, the another as an invader. Both with the same objective, to separate the human being from knowledge of God. And this is where many go wrong. You don't need to see demonic possession to know you're under attack. Just give in to pride, fear, lies, and your influence already has started. But maybe the most disconcerting thing is not its power, but the fact that God still allows them. Why not silence them once and for all? Why let these entities continue acting in the human history? The answer leads us to a truth even deeper and more mysterious. A truth that has to do with the divine justice, the eternity, and the time perfect of God. At this point, the question resonates more strongly. Why does God, being just, continue to allowing Satan and his hosts exist? Many, they imagine God as a judge with a firm hand, ready to execute sentence at the first act of rebellion. But the God's justice is not moved by emotional impulses nor by human reactions. It is moved by eternal principles. To understand this, first, we must remember that spiritual beings do not die like humans. They do not age, they do not get sick, they do not cease to exist due to natural causes. They are eternal in essence, and its judgment is not physical, it is spiritual and final. But here is the mystery. God does not execute that trial immediately, and not because he can't, but because he doesn't want to close the trial before all evidence this exposed. Because when God judges, his justice is so absolute that it leaves no room for doubt, neither in his sky, nor in the earth, nor under the land. Think about it. Before destroying Sodom, God came down to see its evil. Before judging Canaan, he waited generations until their corruption will reach its peak. Even with the Israelites, God sent prophets again and again before allowing them to fall. You see, he patterned. God waits. Because his justice, it is not based only on the punishment, but in the chance. And here comes another key element, the divine patience. God delays the judgment because he is still working, still teaching, still redeeming. He allows evil to fully manifest itself, not to justify it, but to defeat it with all the cards on the table. In this great history, God does not seek only to punish the guilty. He wants every being, angel or human, to see with clarity who is he, what does he represent, justice, and how his love operates. And that wait is also an act of mercy toward we, because the day that he decides to close the judgment, there will be no more backtracking. That's why still there is time, still there is chance. But for all this makes sense, we need to understand something even deeper, that without freedom, there is no true love. Why didn't God create a universe without the possibility of evil? Why allow an angel rebel? Why give humans the ability to betray, lie, hate? The answer is found in the mystery deeper than the creation, free will. God did not want automata. He did not design robots programmed to obey. He wanted children who chose love him freely, and that freedom, like all real freedom, brings with it a risk, the risk of the betrayal, the risk of the pain, the risk of Satan. Because without option, there is no love. A forced love is not love, it is slavery. That is why God placed in his creatures, angels and humans, the ability to choose, and with it the possibility of the rejection. Lucifer chose, Adam chose, and today each of us chooses at every moment. But that risk, however devastating, is the price of authentic love. God valued more the possibility of sincere love than the security of programmed obedience. That's why he didn't destroy Satan immediately, because doing so, it would have been like erasing the possibility of choice. And if there is no choice, there is no redemption, there is no history, there is no cross. Imagine for a moment that we all acted well just because we don't have option. What merit would it have? What beauty there would be in that? None. But when someone, with complete freedom, decides to love God, decides to forgive, to believe, to resist temptation, trust in half of the pain, then the entire universe stops to contemplate something that neither the angels can ignore, an act of true love. Satan is, paradoxically, the consequence inevitable of a universe where love is possible, and it is also the test that reveals who has truly chosen God. Free will not only explains the existence of evil, it also reveals the power of well when it is chosen out of conviction and not out of obligation. And here comes an even more surprising twist. God, in his eternal wisdom, has even used the rebellion of Satan to carry out his most glorious plan. But to see that clearly, you have to look at the hidden role of the enemy in the compliance of divine purpose. This may be the most disconcerting point of this whole story. Satan, the enemy par excellence, has been used by God to fulfill his supreme will. Not because God approves his evil, not because tolerate it, but because his wisdom is so high, so unfathomable, that even the most perverse acts can be transformed into instruments of redemption. Look at the most powerful example of all, Jesus in the desert. It was he, Spirit of God, who took Christ into the desert, knowing that Satan would try there. And it was that temptation, that direct attack of the adversary, what he revealed purity, the obedience and the dignity of the Son of God. Without the confrontation, there would be no demonstration. Later, Satan would influence Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus. And that act of betrayal, apparently a victory from evil, became in the door toward the crucifixion and the salvation from all over the world. What you see, Satan was an involuntary instrument of the greatest work of love ever performed. This does not mean that God needs from evil. It means that nothing, nor not even the deepest darkness, can thwart his plan. He not only restores it damaged, redeems it. Not only does it defeat the enemy, exposes as part of a story a lot elderly. Pablo, it expressed thus: all things are given to those who love God. Help for good, even the attack of the enemy, even the pain, even the betrayal. In the eternal theater of the universe, Satan is not the director. It's just an actor, blind to the script that God already has written. And that changes everything, because it means that what we do today, you see chaos, tomorrow can reveal itself as a purpose, that what hurts you today, tomorrow can sanctify yourself. The enemy doesn't know it, but every step he takes against the divine plan is another step further towards his own fall. But there's something even deeper in all this. God isn't simply handling evil, he's revealing something about his character, something that has to do not with power, but with love. Many, they imagine God as an impatient judge, ready to destroy the rebel with a lightning from the sky. But that image is far away of the heart true of God. Just because his goal was simply eliminate evil, Satan would no longer exist. There is no power that can do it prevent. There is no obstacle that can hold back his hand. But God does not seek to destroy. He seeks to transform. He does not want subjects obedient out of fear. He wants hearts surrendered by love. If God had eliminated Lucifer at the first sign of pride, what would the universe have learned? Only that the strongest crushes the rebel, that the obedience is imposed, not chosen. And that is not what God wants to reveal. God is not a cosmic dictator. He is a father, a creator, a redeemer. And its purpose is not to sow terror, but to raise awareness. It is not to annihilate, but to restore. It is not to silence evil for the force, but expose it until its own perversion, condemn him in front of the entire creation. That is why it allows the time. That's why the judgment is delayed. For every day that Satan follows active, every temptation, every lie, every injustice, becomes in a public test of his evil, and in contrast a manifestation even clearer of love and God's justice. Jesus, it said in an unforgettable parable, of the prodigal son. That son who rebelled, left, fell, but upon returning found the Father with the arms open. That's the one image of God, not that of an executioner, but that of a Father who waits, who allows the fall to cause the return. Destroy Satan immediately would have finished the history with fear, but allow it existence for a time is the opportunity for millions discover who God really is, a God who loves even when he is rejected, who offers forgiveness even when wounded, and what awaits, because his ultimate goal is not to crush the enemy, but to reveal the greatness of his love. And when that love has been revealed, then, yes, it will come, judgment, but not like many imagine, not as revenge, but as justice perfect. There is no escape. There is no evasion. The final judgment has a date. And although nobody in the land knows, in his sky, it's already marked. The Bible is clear. It will come a day, not figurative, not symbolic, but literal, when Satan will be judged and destroyed forever. That day will not be an outburst of divine wrath, but the consummation of a justice long foretold. Apocalypse it describes with a solemnity unbreakable, and the devil that cheated was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, and they will be tormented day and night by the centuries of the centuries. That moment is not an act of cruelty. It is the just outcome of a story where evil had opportunity and showed his true nature. God will not act without evidence, will not judge without testimony, and that is why the history has run its course. Every temptation, every injustice, every tear shed because of evil is being recorded, not for revenge, but for restoration, because the God's judgment is not just punishment, it is cosmic correction. It is restoring the original order. It is to clean the creation of all corruption. It is to close the chapter of the rebellion with a sentence that reflects not only power, but truth. And while many they wait that day with fear, others, those who know the Lamb, they wait with hope, because they know they won't be judged by their works, but covered by the righteousness of Christ. The final judgment is not just against Satan. It is against everything that has been opposite to God: lies, hatred, pride, destruction, spiritual arrogance. And it is also the vindication of the just, of the martyrs, of the faithful. It is the moment when every knee will bend, not out of obligation, but because the truth will be undeniable. That day will arrive, and with he, the enemy will be silenced forever. But you and I, we are still on the side of the history where there is choice. And that choice, like everything we've seen, has a single foundation. Do you believe that God has won? Do you believe that love is stronger than evil? If so you think, then do not fear, because what is coming after of the judgment is the beginning of something eternal. Everything you have heard so far is not a story of defeat. It is a story of victory, a victory that already was proclaimed in the cross, a victory sealed with blood, resurrection, and eternal promise. Satan does not reign, was defeated. It only operates under the temporary permission from a God who transforms even the darkness in testimony. When Christ died, it seemed the end. When was buried, the hell celebrated. But on the third day, the darling roared with glory. The Lamb rose, and with he, the sentence was dictated. The enemy is defeated. What we see now is just the echo of a battle already decided. We don't fight to win, we fight from the victory, and that changes everything. You are not just another victim of chaos. You are an heir to the light. You do not walk in this world blindly, but as part of an eternal purpose. You have authority, identity, destiny, but there is something that still you must do. This message cannot be die here. If it touched your heart, if it moved your thoughts, if it made you look at the darling with new eyes, subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs to understand that evil has the last word. And even more, leave a comment with this phrase, "I am heir to the victory of Christ." Write it as a declaration, as a banner, because the words, they have power, and your faith can awaken others. You have traveled a path of revelation, of questions, of truths that are not always heard in temples or books. And now the decision is yours. Will you live as someone who fears evil, or as someone who you already know that the good succeeded? Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for daring to look beyond of the veil. And remember this, you are not alone. You are not lost. You are in the center of the wisest and most powerful plan in the universe. See you in the next mystery. Until then, walk on faith, walk in victory.